Hey everybody, Eric here with Action Yugioh, and this weekend my local card shop, Action Sports, opened for the first time since the pandemic started for in-person play, and I decided to go and play my favorite deck, Code Talkers, and I ended up getting first place. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity to do an updated list on my Code Talker deck. So to start things off, for our normal summons, I play 3 Nightmare Corruptor Ibly, 3 Lady Debug, 1 Formud Skipper, and 1 Cyber Skagit. There's a lot of different normal summons that you can use in this deck, but these are the ones that you want to do for your normal summons, and these are the ones that you need to get on the field normally with your normal summon. There's other ways to get these out, but these are usually the ones that you start with. The best one to start with is Nightmare Corruptor Ibly. The reason is you can kind of play around Droll with it. You go into Baylinks off of this and you organize your chain links as Chainlink 1 Ibly, Chainlink 2 Baylinks. That way, if you get hit with Droll, you already have a pretty good start and you only need 1 or 2 extenders in order to make a really good board. You also play around Bell by doing that, since your opponent can't Bell this since it's Chainlink 1 of a 2-part Chainlink. Next up, I played 3 Microcoder and 2 Code Generator. These cards are both really great. What these do is you can use these from hand for the link summon of a Code Talker monster, and then if you use these monsters for the summon of a Code Talker monster, they both have grave effects. Generator is a Foolish Burial, and Microcoder lets you search for any Signet spell or trap. And when you Foolish Burial with Generator, you normally send your Dotscaper. This can also be one of your normal summons, but usually you want to use its effect off of just discarding it or sending it off of Generator. When it's sent to Graveyard or banished, you can summon it back to the field, but you can only use one of those effects per turn, and both effects are once per duel. Next up, I played 2 Parallaxes. These are really spectacular. You only play 2 because it is searchable. Through your general combo, you do actually search this, so there's no reason to play 3. 2 works out perfectly. Next up, I play 1 Salamangreat Gazelle and 1 Spinny. These cards are spectacular. These turn your Lady Debug into a 1-card OTK. These are also really good for if you happen to get hit with Droll. Since this sends this to grave from deck, it does kind of let you play around it if you start with this in hand. Next up, a new addition to my deck, I'm playing 1 Mathmech Sigma. Previously, I was playing a Mathmech Addition, but I found Sigma to be a bit more useful since you can just go ahead and discard it and then bring it back by its own effect. It just plays a little bit better within the deck, and it does the same thing that you need it to do, being that it is a searchable monster off of Signet Mining that lets you play if your opponent happens to wipe your board and you need to search for something to just throw down. Next up, I played 1 Gachiri Adagnister. This card is absolutely spectacular. This is an important part of your combo because it makes you capable of making your firewall unaffected by opponent's card effects, so that your end board is just a lot stronger. Next up, I played 1 Link Infraflyer, 1 Scriptron, and 1 Sea Archiver. These are cards to search off of Signet Codec. They're just additional bodies that you can throw on board. You need Cyberse monsters of different attributes, and that's exactly what these are for. Scriptron, I'm thinking about cutting. This is a 41 card deck, so if you want to cut this yourself, you absolutely can. I'm thinking about cutting it just to make the deck a little bit more consistent. This deck does have a hard matchup up against Drytron if you have to go second, so being able to go into your stronger cards against that matchup a little bit easier is pretty good. Speaking of Drytron, we are main decking 3 Droll and Lockbird. The Drytron matchup is kind of dice rolly. If you go first, you normally win against that deck. If you go second, you normally lose. So being able to main deck cards that make it to where that's not exactly the case is really good. Yeah, you just really want to see this up against Drytron. I also play some other cards for it a little bit further into the list. But onto the spells and traps, I play 3 Cynet Codec, 3 Cynet Mining, and 1 Cynet Optimization. I clumped these all together because these are all searchable off of Microcoder. Cynet Codec is the most important card in the deck. What it does is every time you summon a Code Talker monster, you can search for a Cyberse monster of the same attribute as that Code Talker monster, and it's once per turn per attribute. You play 5 different attributes of Code Talker monsters, so you can search up to 5 times per turn off of this card. And it is searchable, so this is absolutely spectacular. Cynet Mining is pretty self-explanatory. It just searches a level 4 or lower Cyberse monster. You're playing Cyberse. Cynet Optimization grants you an additional normal summon and turns all of your Code Talker monsters into Armades. This is really important because you can search for your Nightmare Corruptor Ibli, and you can give it to your opponent as the 5th summon if you play Cynet Optimization, but you need to play Cynet Optimization to do that. And if you are going second, a lot of the times you'll search Cynet Optimization to be sure that you can OTK your opponent. Next up, I played 1 Salamangreat Sanctuary. This card is really important because it is searchable and it does let you combo a little bit. But if you have this on field and you give your opponent Ibli, and your opponent tries to attack into one of your monsters with Ibli, this can change your monster's attack to 0, meaning that the Nightmare Corruptor Ibli will not die. It makes it much harder for your opponent to get rid of their Ibli. Next up, I played 3 one-ofs. I played 1 for 1, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Called by the Grave. These are all really important in order to ensure that you can play. Called by the Grave in particular is really good because everybody's running Droll right now. And you can play if your opponent Drolls you. I think today I got Drolled, I think when I played I got Drolled like 3 or 4 times and I only lost 1 of those games. That's what's so good about this deck. It's very resilient. But you know, if you could stop the opponent's Droll, it's even better. You're just making an insane board. Last spell I ran was Triple Forbidden Droplets. If you don't have the droplets, run either D, Crow, or Dark Ruler no more. But the reason I ran droplets is because it is a quick play. So the 2 most represented decks right now are Drytron and Tri-Brigade. And this is really good against both matchups. Since you can use this to negate Appa, you can use this to negate whatever they summon off of the Revolt, and most importantly, you can use this to negate the Herald of Ultimateness, and whatever else Drytron happens to leave on field. So this is really good against both matchups. That's why I chose to run 3. You also have a lot of cards that you can just discard that still do things in Grave. So this worked out really well. Last card I ran was 1 Cynet Conflict. This is a searchable counter trap, and it is just spectacular. I think this is one of the best counter traps they ever printed. It negates the card, it negates a spell, trap, or monster, and it banishes it. You just need to control a Code Talker monster to use it, and on top of that, your opponent cannot activate cards with the same name until the end of the next turn. So in one of my Drytron matchups, I banished the ritual spell, and they, even if they could search an additional ritual spell, they couldn't use it anyway, so they just lost that game. On to the extra deck. So I ran, for Link 1s, I ran 2 Balinks, 1 Lingaribo, and 1 Talkback Lancer. Talkback Lancer is full recovery if you draw it. Lingaribo negates traps, so it lets you play going second. And Balinks is here for combos, and it also lets you search Sanctuary, making your boards significantly stronger. This deck can play quite a few Link 1s. Cyberse is a great typing. Next up, for Link 2s, I played 1 Code Talker Inverted, 1 Code Talker, 1 Splash Mage, and 1 Update Jammer. Update Jammer is for OTKs. Splash Mage is one of the best cards ever printed for Cyberse. It's just a monster reborn in a Link 2. Code Talker is for combos, since it lets you search for the Dark attribute, and Code Talker Inverted is also for combos, lets you search for the Light attribute. It also lets you It lets you special summon a monster from hand. So what you do with it is, if you get multiple normal summons, you can just throw down your other normal summon. And if you have Codec, you can organize your chain links with this is chain link 1, Codec is chain link 2. So you can search a light and special summon a light all at the same time. It basically lets you special summon a light from deck in that situation. But do know, in order to do that, you have to have a Cyberse monster in hand, or else you cannot legally do that. For Link 3s, we ran all code talkers. We ran 2 transcodes, 1 shooting code, and 1 X code. Search for a wind, search for a water, search for an earth. Transcode is also just a spectacular card in general. Having 2 of it comes up all the time. You use the first one for your starting combos, and then the second one can be used to OTK your opponent on the second turn. There are even situations where you make this in order to make your boards a little bit better while going first. Xcode Talker is also spectacular. Anything it points to can't be destroyed by card effects and gains 500, so it's just super strong and makes your boards even better. And Shooting Code Talker is probably the worst Code Talker in the main deck. You mainly play it because it's a water attribute, but for example, if you Dark Ruler your opponent's board, you can make this with an Update Jammer, and then you can attack 2 of your opponent's cards. This has an effect where it can attack multiple things anyway, but it does have a downside. So a lot of times I'll go ahead and just make this with an Update Jammer just to be sure it can attack twice. And then if this destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can draw a card for each monster destroyed by battle. So a lot of times you're going to be able to draw 2 off of this if you do it like that, but it doesn't come up a lot. Finally, for our Link 4s, we ran 1 access code. Obviously, it's way better in this deck than in a lot of other ones. 1 Avermax and 1 Fireball Dragon. I did get an ulti Fireball Dragon. It looks spectacular. Fireball Dragon is also amazing in this deck. A lot of times when you Ibly your opponent, you just make a Fireball Dragon. Even if you don't extra link them, if they normal summon something, you just bounce back their normal summon, and they just can't play the game. So a lot of times if you get hit with a Droll and Lockbird, you just do that, and you win anyway. But do know, if you're playing up against Drytron, if they normal summon the Diviner, what they can do is they can send an inst off of it in order to pop the Ibly. In that case, you don't bounce back the Diviner with Fireball Dragon, you wait for a better point in their combo. A lot of times when you make Fireball Dragon, you make it with a Gachiri, so it's unaffected by everything, or everything your opponent activates. And at that point, you just kind of wait for the optimal time to hit them. Sometimes you bounce back the Mu Beta Fafnir whenever they activate their ritual spell. Sometimes you wait for them to summon an access code or a Boral Sword Dragon, and you just bounce that back. But yeah, Fireball Dragon is insane in this deck. Yeah, really, really good. Finally, on to the side deck, I ran triple Fantastical Dragon Phantasme and 2 Nibiru. Now, the side deck is still a work in progress. I'm not sure if I like 3 and 2. I might mess with that, but I think these are the hand traps with the best synergy with Code Talkers, because these summon themselves on the opponent's turn, so it doesn't matter what typing they are. And they are an additional monster on board, so you can use them for Code Talker, Transcode Talker, or Access Code Talker. And Fantastical Dragon Phantasme in particular helps protect your board, lets you negate stuff that targets, which is really good. And it's just super strong against Sky Striker. It makes that matchup super easy. And Nibiru is just good against a lot of decks. Now, I also ran triple Cosmic Cyclone, just for back row decks, and triple Dark Ruler no more. Definitely side these in up against Drytron, especially if you're going second. Drytron is a hard matchup. It's really important to be able to have these to stop it. I also might start siding DD Crows just to deal with that matchup. Matchup's really, really dice rolly. Next up, I ran a little bit more back row hate. I ran Harpy's Feather Duster and Anti-Magic Arrows. Anti-magic arrows is really cool. Up against anything with like really tricky back row, you can activate this at the start of the battle phase, and then for the rest of the turn, neither player can activate spells, traps, or their effects. So you can't use codec if you use this, but you can go ahead and activate this, go into an access code, pop everything that you're worried about, and then just make something a little bit difficult to get over, and then just win the game from there. Next up, I ran 1 Mind Control. This card is super good. Obviously, you can link off with anything that you take, but specifically up against the Tri-Brigade matchup, you can take your opponent's Apollousa, and it leaves your opponent in a really awkward situation where they can use their Revolt. Because they can organize the chain links when they summon out the link 4, they can still banish one of your monsters. But you are going to be able to negate one of the effects of the monster that was used for Revolt, either Kit or Nerval, and then it just leaves your opponent in an awkward situation where they're either going to have to banish their own Apollousa, or they're going to have to banish one of your cards. And if they don't banish the Apollousa and they have hand traps, they have to deal with the fact that you can negate their hand traps with their own Apollousa. So this card is really good. It's also really funny against other decks to take a link monster and then kind of use the link arrows to your own benefit in Code Talkers. Finally, the last card I ran was 1 Red Reboot. Going second, this is just kind of a push hard OTK deck. So being able to negate your opponent's trap card and just kill them on the same turn is super valuable. But that is pretty much it. This was my Code Talker list, my updated one. I really hope, if you watched this all the way through, that you found this helpful. Thanks for watching the video. Let me know what you'd like to see next in the comment section down below. Remember to like and subscribe, and if you'd like to contact me directly, you can do so over Discord, link in the description.